Okay, is that us ready? Okay, so hello, my name is Elaine Rajkumar. I am the coordinator for Good Morning Carrickfergus.
Hello everybody, my name is Victoria. I am the befriending coordinator at Volunteer Now, and this morning I have one of my befriending volunteers, Suzanne Kirk, with me also. Thank you. Thanks, Elaine.
Okay, thank you, Victoria. So just a bit of background about Good Morning Carrickfergus. I'm not sure if everyone will have heard of us. We are a free telephone befriending charity, and we serve Carrickfergus, Whitehead and Green Island area. Our client base would be anyone 18 plus. So we have lots of different types of people from different situations, different lifestyles. But the point of befriending is to alleviate loneliness, and loneliness can be anybody. So we have a team of 20 volunteers plus myself, who is paid staff. Our volunteers, 15 of those would be telephone befriending volunteers, so they make the calls daily, Monday to Friday. We're based in our office here in the Church of the Nazarene in Carrickfergus, and we've always insisted that volunteers make the calls from the office, basically to protect the clients and to protect the volunteers too, so that we can monitor any conversations and answer any difficult questions. But as you know, last March when we went into lockdown, we were faced with closing the service, and we were very concerned about that because we operate all throughout holiday times, Christmas, Easter, we always make the calls. So we were very concerned because we thought, well, if everyone is going to be locked down, staying at home, our service is even more vital to them. So most of our volunteers have been with us a long time. So we had a committee meeting, we had a chat with the volunteers. We thought, well, they were happy to work from home if we could provide them with the facilities, really. So that's what's been going on since March last year. We have a few people coming back into the office now because we have a few volunteers that don't have facilities to make the calls from home, because the phone call can be quite expensive. However, we do support our volunteers financially. If they are out of pocket, we will pay for telephone bills at the minute. So yes, the volunteers have all been very they've went up above and beyond really what they normally would do, and they have been probably making many more calls than they did before when they were not in the office, because our client base at the start of the lockdown, for the first 3 months, our referrals were threefold actually compared to the previous year. So we had 89 referrals within those first few months. People, when day centres were closing down and all the other social groups that people went to were closing down, they were frightened that they were going to be sitting at home day in, day out and forgotten about. So some of our clients even went from 1 call a week to 5 calls a week. They just felt they needed that extra support. So our volunteers have, as I said, gone above and beyond what we expected them to do. We also run a monthly lunch group in addition to our telephone calls. So we would invite our clients up. The church lets us use their facilities. There are ladies from the church who'll come in and cook for us. And we invite them up once a month. So obviously we couldn't be doing that either. So to try and keep the face-to-face contact with people, we then prepared, 2 of the ladies actually of our volunteers prepared meals. They made batches of stew and soup and roast beef dinners, and they were all frozen, and the volunteers were then delivering those out to the clients as well. So it's good to keep that face-to-face contact, because our volunteers have become friends of the clients. It's not just a name on a computer screen. We know these people, and they know us, and it's good to keep that face-to-face contact, because you can actually see, I think, how someone is doing better than just talking to them, because they don't always give you all the information. So apart from that, like the phone calls themselves, there's 35,000 phone calls we've made over this past year and a half to 190 people. That is quite a lot. That's a lot of talking. It's a lot to ask of a volunteer. They're only doing it because they love to be involved with people. They love to pass on, their love that they have for people. So we've been, as I said, we've been trying to support the volunteers. So every day after they've been on the calls, I'll give them a ring, check in with them, make sure everything's okay, make sure they're okay, because they have life events too. 2 of our volunteers have lost children of their own through illness, and that's a big stress in their life. So we're trying to support them as well as supporting the clients. Then also last winter, instead, because we weren't able to have our Christmas dinner as usual, we applied for funding, which we were so grateful to get, and we were able to put together winter packs. And we had in those winter packs, we had a hand knit blanket for each client, and those blankets were knit by many volunteers within the community, not just our Good Morning Carrick volunteers, but from all over Carrickfergus. We had 150 blankets hand knit for us, and we were so grateful for that, because these were people that didn't know us, they didn't have any involvement with our service, but we put the call out on social media, and the offers came flooding in from, we had a lady who actually knit 10 for us. She was just loved it so much. And we've had people calling us this year to say, are we doing the blankets again? But unfortunately we weren't able to get our funding in time again this year. But we are putting together another winter pack for the clients, which again the volunteers will be delivering out. So we're still trying to keep that what we call doorstep visits, face-to-face contact with each client. And also, actually, there are quite a lot of new clients that have come on board, but that we have never met, because they've come on board the last few months. We haven't been doing any visits, and I usually would do an initial visit with a client, so they don't know who we are, so they're trusting us, they're trusting our volunteers to speak to them on the phone. It's not easy speaking to a stranger on the phone, but very quickly our volunteers are not strangers to those people. They become like part of the family, become really good friends with them. So again, the volunteers themselves, we have managed to get together on 4 occasions actually during when there were periods of easement, and that in fact we actually just got together there on Tuesday. Again, we had a little Christmas coffee morning for the volunteers. Our volunteers all get on so well together. You could not fault them at all. We've had such great times together, trying to sharing our own life, really, our feelings, our worries, our stresses, and trying to support each other. We've had offered counselling sessions to people. I don't know if any of them have taken that, because obviously that's between them and the counsellor, but we have offered free counselling. And everyone seems to be still quite happy to work away from home. I think some of them are quite keen not to have to get out on a cold morning, and they can stay in their pajamas and do their phone calls. But they are such wonderful people. And we have had a couple of new volunteers have started with us recently, but the downside of that is that they have to come into the office, because we need to make sure they're supported as they learn. We use computer systems, so they've got to learn to use that. We also need to be sure they're supporting the clients in the correct way. So yes, that's really what we've been doing for our volunteers, and some of them have been with us 12 years. You know, they are, I don't know, I haven't got words to describe how much I love them and how wonderful they are. But I mean, I do hope they feel supported by us. Thank you.
Thanks, Elaine. I was getting quite emotional there at the end.
Oh.
They are wonderful. Hi everyone, my name is Victoria. I work with Volunteer Now in their community projects team. I would mostly coordinate the befriending service, but also would give support to the shopping and driving services. Bev, would you share my presentation, please? That's great, thank you. Okay, so Bev, if you would just go to the next page. Thank you. So within our community projects, we have several services. The ones I work directly with are our befriending, driving and shopping. These services are funded by the Belfast Trust, and they are to support people who are 60 years plus living in their own homes in Belfast. So the befriending is for people who are referred, who are feeling lonely and or isolated. More often than not, these people are in their 80s and 90s that are referred through to us. And it's those older people who have got to that stage where they're maybe not able to attend day centres, go to church, maybe do their own shopping. You know, they just don't get out and about as much, spending lots of time at home. And they would be referred through for that befriending support, someone who can come in or presently telephone them to just provide friendship and a conversation and someone who has time just to sit and have a chat with them. Our driving service would support people to attend medical appointments. And again, these are people who are referred because they don't have family or friends that can support them to do this. And our shopping support service, again, similar in that it's for people who don't have other people to provide this service for them. But this is a brand new service that did just start at the beginning of COVID. Within Volunteer Now, we also support a network of volunteer-led older people's groups. There's the West Belfast 50 Plus Forum, the Greater Shankles. I'm really sorry, the postman's knocking at the door. The Greater Shankle Senior Citizens Forum, and then the G6. So the G6 represents the 6 forums across Belfast, and it aims to provide or improve the wellbeing and lifestyle of older people in Belfast. So all the forums do work with people within their community, older people, trying to keep them active, trying to get them involved in activities, getting them involved in things that are happening in their locality. Okay, Bev, would you move to the next slide, please? Okay, so on the 14th of March, 2021, we stopped all face-to-face activities. Our befriending service moved from face-to-face visits to telephone befriending, and that was where appropriate. Unfortunately, for some of our service users, telephone befriending didn't suit because of maybe a hearing loss or dementia. So we weren't able to continue with all relationships, but we were able to continue with about 3/4, which was great. Our volunteer befrienders were wonderful. They were very happy to move from the face-to-face visits to telephone befriending. And indeed, they also took on extra responsibility. So quite a few went from supporting one person to supporting 2 or sometimes 3 people. Our driving service stopped, all drives except essential medical appointments. And we did have 2 drivers who continued to drive a small number of plants throughout the pandemic. We had some service users who didn't have family or friends who could take them to appointments, but their appointments continued because it was essential cancer treatment or dialysis. And we had 2 volunteers who were just absolutely fantastic during this time, who did step up and wanted to continue to support those people. All forum meetings and activities ceased. That stopped. Okay, Bev, if we could move on to the next slide, please. So how do we look after our volunteers' wellbeing during this time? So basically fast, effective communication. As soon as we knew how dangerous this virus was going to be, we got the message out to our volunteers immediately that we were going to stop. We got messages out to all our service users that our services were going to have to change or stop in some circumstances. And we then rewrote our role descriptions, taking into consideration COVID and the regulations that we needed to put in place to keep everybody safe. We kept in touch with our volunteers as often as needed to be, and in those early months, as everyone will know, that was quite regularly because the situation was changing all the time. We kept in contact with telephone calls, emails, text messages, depending on the individual volunteers. We also did a volunteer update every 3 weeks that went out to everybody, that updated them on all the services and what was happening. Some volunteers would maybe have needed a bit more extra support, and other volunteers were very happy just to get on with it. So it was just, an awareness of the people that we needed to give more time to, and those other people who were happy to just get on with it and contact us whenever they felt that support was required. Bev, if you could move to the next slide. Okay, thank you. We provided guidance to our shopping and driving volunteers regarding keeping themselves and those they were supporting safe. So information on how to clean the car appropriately before and after each drive, wearing a mask while driving or shopping, using hand sanitizer before and after any contact with service users, providing lateral flow test kits and encouraging volunteers to take a test within 24 hours before contact with the service user. And all relevant PPE was provided: masks, wipes, hand sanitizer, gloves, antibacterial spray, disposable seat covers and kits. Obviously, this was all discussed with volunteers before they were taken on the role to make sure that they were comfortable with these things. Our forum members were all older people, or are all older people, and fell into the vulnerable category due to their age. Quite a number of them also then fell into the extremely vulnerable category because they had other health conditions, and it meant that quite a number of them also then had to shield. We talked as a team and identified those individuals that we believed were more vulnerable, and we made contact with them. And this was where the idea of our shopping support service came from. When we realised that some of these older people who had been supporting us in their role within the older people's forums maybe were going to be struggling in these earlier days of the pandemic, where they didn't have people to rely upon to maybe go and get their shopping for them, and they would have that extra stress. So we made contact with individuals to see how we could help. Now, again, a number of these people were very happy. They were confident and happy and able to get on with things, but a smaller number then did need our support, and we were able to provide help with shopping. And also we began to do weekly check-in calls, just making sure that they were okay, if there was anything else maybe we could do, if there was any services we could refer them on to. Bev, if you could move on to the next slide, please. So as time moved on and we realised that COVID wasn't going anywhere, we looked at other ways of supporting our volunteers. They were just so wonderful, basically just getting on with it. And we wanted to try our best to try and help them. So we were successful in a grant application, and it was a colleague of mine who put in a grant application and was successful, and we were able to buy tablets for the forum members. She put together a Zoom wellbeing program, including fitness classes, flower arranging, memory lane historian talks, genealogy talks, and cookery classes. There was also Christmas cake decorating last year, which was wonderful. And I remember that we were driving around and dropping off items on doorsteps, flowers, icing, ingredients for cooking. And it was just wonderful because so many of them did engage with this. And then when restrictions began to ease, a series of socially distanced walks were arranged in local parks, accessible for these people where they could make their own way there. and they just loved it whenever they were able to, this opportunity to see a member of staff in person and also to meet up with their familiar friends and have a walk around the park in a very safe way, and maybe bring a takeaway coffee with them. But it really helped to boost their mood. We were also successful in another funding application, and we bought some Volunteer Now t-shirts. It was this year during Volunteers Week, and we posted them out to our befrienders, drivers and shopping volunteers, along with a bar of chocolate, because everybody loves a bar of chocolate, and a certificate just to say thank you. And then recently we also received some more funding, which enabled us to purchase some fleeces for our volunteers. And again, it's, you know, our befrienders, drivers and shoppers are lone working, and we've always encouraged them over the years to come into our get-togethers and come along to training sessions, because then that's when you realise that you're part of this bigger team and that's not just you going out there alone to deliver this service. But obviously with COVID, that's been a bit more challenging. So we bought these fleeces and we were able to distribute them to the volunteers. Again, it's just to try and make people feel that they're part of the wider team and give them that sense of identity. I have one of my volunteers here with me today, Suzanne, and she's just sitting over here. Suzanne is one of our befriending volunteers and had been visiting a lady before COVID for a couple of years, and they just get on like a house on fire. And whenever COVID hit, Suzanne moved from the face-to-face visits to telephone befriending, and then also took on another lady who she has continued to telephone every week, and that's been, it won't be long, coming up to 2 years now. But Suzanne, just wondering, how did you feel volunteering during the pandemic?
Well, it was, I think, I felt it was even more vital of a service, you know, particularly the way the pandemic was and how vital it is to people on their own. You know, there are people that, you know, as Victoria has alluded to, are lonely, they're on their own, they don't see anybody. That they can have a very supportive and loving family. But as it was described to me, you know, it's very confined sometimes, the conversations that they can have with them, and to get a telephone call even has lifted their day. I myself personally have taken what I have gleaned and experienced with Volunteer Now into other aspects of my life as well. And I actually also volunteer for a national charity, and I phone a lady in Leeds every week. But as I say, the pandemic was difficult, it definitely was, but two of my ladies I would have phoned more than once a week. I would have texted them, I would have posted them little things as well. And the support from Victoria and Volunteer Now as a whole was vital. And as I say, it boosts your own confidence, it boosts your own social skills, because you never thought you could sit and talk to somebody for an hour on the phone, although I can talk quite well, as Victoria knows. So yes, it had its challenges, and it pushed me out of my comfort zone. But as I say, I think as a result, I developed, I think, extra skills because of the pandemic. I mean, I know that's maybe sounds daft to say, but we were all living in difficult times and we all had to adjust. So, you know, the volunteering meant a lot to me personally, and it helped me as well in my sort of lockdown, because my husband was vulnerable, so I couldn't go out as much as what I wanted to. So yes, I found it very challenging, but very satisfying as well, that I could still contribute in some way to these ladies, and hopefully it will continue as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, so finally, we were also very lucky to have received some funding from Diageo Ireland, and this was money raised by the staff, and they wanted to donate to a charity working within a community setting. So earlier this year, we were able to put together some wellbeing packs, and we distributed them to our service users and our volunteers. And there was a little book of mindfulness, an aromatherapy candle and sachets, some fluffy socks, hot chocolate, hand chocolate, a thermal mug. We've got some playing cards, and we did wrote out some activities that could be played, and they were given to the service users to try and keep them active. And I did a lot of doorstep drops with those, and it was really lovely actually just to see people. And they just appreciated this little gift so much, because there'd been so much doom and gloom. So that was fantastic. And in fact, Diageo have given us some more funding. And just very recently, we have been able to have 2 afternoon teas where we've brought a small number of our service users in with volunteers, and we've had some entertainment. And it has been so lovely to have some people together again. And all being well, this week coming, we are hoping to have a Christmas lunch with a slightly larger number of people, but again, just taking all the restrictions into consideration and trying to keep everyone safe, but realizing that, it makes such a huge difference to them. And it's really lovely that we're able to do that, bring them in and have their volunteers there too. It's really wonderful. And my last line, however, we feel no gift can truly show the depth of appreciation we have for those volunteers who supported and continue to support us to deliver our services. And I really believe that, and I think Elaine alluded to that too with our volunteers. They're just so wonderful. We wouldn't be able to do what we do without them, and we try and give as much support as we can, and if we're in a position to give a gift, but it really is never enough to convey how grateful we truly are. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Victoria and Elaine, for really uplifting presentations this morning. Really brilliant to hear. And Suzanne as well, thank you so much for joining us today. Elaine, I wonder, can you come back onto the stage? Because we've got a few questions there in the chat. Just hang on a wee second till Elaine joins us. There we are. Yep. Brilliant. The wonders of technology. Hey, who knew that we could be doing all of this today?
I still don't know what I'm doing.
I don't think any of us do, but we're just getting through it. Bit by bit. So some of the questions that have gone into the chat here, I'm just looking, the one that sort of come top is a practical one for Victoria and Elaine. Really, how have you been able to access support yourselves to continue to be able to support others so well? And what sorts of things have you been doing to look after yourselves? I would imagine neither of you are particularly good at that. I imagine you're more focused on giving to other people, but see if you can answer it.
Well, personally, I think for me, I work with a small team, but we're a really close team. And although I would be predominantly in charge of befriending, we share responsibilities and we can talk. And if I'm having a particularly difficult day, or if there's something that I'm just not sure how to proceed with, I know that I can immediately get in contact with my manager or my colleagues and talk to them, and that's really helped. And again, as something that Elaine said, a lot of our volunteers have been with us for quite a while, and they're experienced, and and I have a really strong relationship with those volunteers now. So, it's nice that sometimes you can just phone up a volunteer and have a really deep conversation. So yeah, it's volunteers and colleagues.
Yeah, well, personally, at the start, when I was working from home, when we were all working from home, I actually did find I struggled because my husband had just retired. My 2 children were homeschooling, and my dad has moved in with us. And it wasn't easy.
That says it all.
Actually, as soon as I could, I moved back to the office, and most of the time I'm here by myself, so I'm okay that way. But a few people work around the building, so I do nip out and have a 5-minute chat if I need my head showered, as my granny would have said, And I think I think there was a point when I wasn't really looking after my own mental health. I was very stressed because there was the workload just, exploded really. But again, the volunteers are experienced, they know what they're doing, and I mean, they are happy to just get on with it. They don't need to be babysat all the time. They're very competent. And I know as you said, I can lift if I need somebody to step in or cover for me or whatever, I just lift the phone. I am the only staff member. Everyone else is a volunteer, but we do have a committee. Although they are all volunteers, they are very supportive, I have to say. I mean, I'm not left to make big decisions by myself. I can ask for help, but I only work 17 hours a week, and you probably think that's not very much, but I don't think I've ever worked 17 hours a week, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Because even when you're at home, the phone's ringing or you're looking at emails, and I do try to not to do that, but sometimes you just have to. If there's an emergency with one of the clients needs something, or they still have, even though there's still the restrictions of age, you still find yourself running out to pick up a prescription, or someone needs something done, but I try to, I have reined myself in a good bit, and I've tried to stick to my boundaries, but I find it very difficult to say no. But I'm okay.
I see a question. Well, it sounds as though they're both happy and finding a bit of support, which is the main thing, because your job. And I see Matthew's put a question in the chat there about how you identified new service users during COVID. Particularly around, he's mentioning that there's been so much evidence of additional social isolation and loneliness. How were you able to support those new clients to come through to access your service during COVID?
Well, I'm funded by the Belfast Trust, and at the beginning of COVID, there was a centre set up for people to be referred through to. And there was a team within the trust called the Wellbeing Coordinators. So the Wellbeing Coordinators would have identified someone who was struggling and maybe needed support through friendship, or whether it was driving or shopping, and then they would have referred through to us. So, our befriending service more than doubled during COVID. And the one thing that was interesting was, I think I'd mentioned previously, a lot of our original service users would have been in their 80s and 90s, but during COVID, that age limit really dropped, and it was people in their 60s and 70s. So again, those more active older people, but then during COVID, who probably had to shield because of age or health conditions. And then suddenly, whenever all those activities and things that they were familiar with were taken away, realized how vulnerable they were. So that's how we identified new service users. And again, we're able to support them because we recruited new volunteers, but also a lot of our current volunteers stepped up and took on extra responsibilities.
Yeah, well, we work very closely with social workers, and also the Mid and East Antrim Agewell Partnership would refer into us. There, another scheme I don't know if you would all know of is the impact officers that are in a lot of the health centres now. So they work with anyone that has, a long-term condition or illness, or on so many medications. So they refer into us. Sometimes just word of mouth. People have contacted me through our Facebook page. Friends of existing service users have, they would give them the number, they give us a ring. Really, we don't have any conditions. If you don't have to be living on your own. We have people we phone who are main carers, so they need support too. We have people, as I said, we do take anyone from 18, but our youngest would be early 40s at the minute. We have parents, single parents, people whose children have been taken into care. It's just, there's so many people, so we can get referrals from a lot of different, and the referrals still keep coming in,
It's brilliant. I'm just conscious of our time. Before we do one last question, I was hoping Suzanne might want to just maybe say one thing about what keeps you going as a volunteer. What's your
Oh, I just love it, Denise. As I say, the lady that I go to see, who Victoria obviously knows, she's just wonderful, and I look forward to every Tuesday or whatever when I go to see her. She has taught me so much, actually, in different areas of my life as well. And I know if I have a problem, I can discuss it with her. I was chuffed yesterday, actually. She was saying that she was out with a group, and because of the situation and people on their own, everybody should have a confidant that they can turn to. And most of her group, she said, sadly said that they had nobody really they could turn to. But she said, I have. And she went on to talk, and she was talking about me, and I was just blown away. And that's, to me, that's just a pinnacle, really.
Yeah, no, absolutely fantastic stories. Ladies, thank you so much for sharing your experience with us this morning. It's just been really moving, and really thank you for all the work that you've done, the hours you've put in over the last couple of years, because I'm sure you've made such a big difference to people. So thank you all very much. Now, I think the technology is going to move us back into the main room so we can have our tea break, but well done, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Yeah, welcome back. I was just listening into the volunteer well-being, and it was just terrific to hear people talking. That was Elaine and Victoria and Suzanne, a volunteer herself. So I was sort of eavesdropping. I hope that was all right, but it was so wonderful to listen to. And that's 11:16 now. So I think what we'll do is we will take a short break after the workshops. I hope you all found them very useful and sharing and encouraging. So we started in the main room this morning, and you were seated at a table. And at that point, you could only share a conversation with others at your table. So if you want to, during coffee, network with others, then just move around the room, just, sort of double click on the table that you would like to go to. If you're having bother seeing the writing at the table, I think you can zoom in, use the scroll function. It makes it a wee bit bigger for those of us with not great eyesight, and switch on your camera and microphone so you'll be able to make the most of that networking once, and do it with a cuppa in your hand. That's, we can be informal in these sorts of circumstances. So we'll meet back, should we say, at what time should we meet back? About 11:30. So we'll come back then and continue on the conference with our next speaker. So I hope everyone is all right and coping with this. I think it's absolutely fascinating to hear and to have this done in this format. So we'll catch up again at 11:30. Thank you.